All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Of Like Minds video podcast. I have a super special guest in today, professional dancer, dance educator, mental health professional, Mr. Kris Terry. Kris, thank you so much for coming on to the show today, brother.
Thank you for having me, brother. Absolutely. For
So,
sure, for
Kris,
sure.
Kris, you have quite a resume, and I think like anything, it's always super fun to just get into the origins and just if you can just talk
Mhm.
about how the hell you even get into dance and um that initial move and that what that inspiration was.
Yeah. I started dancing like fairly late for a lot of people. I started when I was like 15.
Hmm.
And so strange enough, I would always love to dance as a kid. Like movies came out, music videos came out, you got served. I like loved Usher's videos, like you don't have to call. Like I remember like watching those videos and being like, man, I love that stuff. Hearing the music and just like wanting to dance and get down and whatever. But honestly, as a kid, I was like super duper insanely afraid of dancing in front of anyone. Like
Hmm.
I would never ever dance in front of anyone ever, and under no circumstances. Like I was that kid that would go to like the middle school dances, and I would be like circling around for hours, like drinking punch, like nervous. Yeah, but I always loved it, and I kind of just kept it to myself.
Hmm.
And then I still remember a time when I was like my sister was playing the radio from her room
Mhm.
and Usher's song was on and I was like in my mom's room, like I was right next to hers, like dancing with the door closed, but she could like see through like the mirror, like me
Uh-huh.
dancing, and I realized it and I was like, I just remember that as being like a moment of like feeling so exposed, and I was like, man, I'm never dancing in front of anybody ever. Um, but yeah, but I still loved it and I like freestyle or whatever. Obviously not very good at all, but do like that on my own time and in secret.
Yeah.
And then when I got to high school, I got like a little bit more confidence. And I think it was my sophomore year and we were kind of, messing around in like the choir room or whatever. And my friend
Uh-huh.
was like, yo, you dance? And I was like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah, sure, whatever. Sure. And so yeah, and then another friend of mine, she told me she was a better dancer than me, and I was like, man, what? Like my boy just told me I was tight. What you talking about? So so from there, she was like, well, my dance teacher's looking for guys at our studio. If you guys want to come through and like check it out and see what it is, and then yada yada yada. So I went to the studio with two of my good friends, and yeah, we took the first class. Teacher was like, hey, we would love to have you guys come in. We have like a scholarship program for the guys where you can come and take class for free and you can help us assist
Mm.
classes and clean the studio and like do this work in the meantime after school. And you take class for free. And I was like, I mean, I don't know anything about this, but I mean, all right, tight.
Wait, wait, so
And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
what was that? What was the when you got this scholarship at the studio? What was the regimen like? What were the classes you had to take? What was that regimen like?
Yeah. Well, it's like a pretty like normal like studio, like no drop-in classes, just like had like consistent regular students, and they had like everything from like ages 3 up to high school, like in different like sections. And we had
Mhm.
class like 3 times a week. I think it was Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Okay.
Different styles like modern, a little bit of ballet,
Mm.
jazz funk, like that kind of vibe. So yeah, yeah, that was where I started. So
I love that. I
yeah.
think that's something that I think you can kind of tell and at least, having taken that class when you guessed it in Top for Grown-ups is, I think you have a wider range of skills and stemming from
Thank you.
your humble beginnings. And if you can just maybe talk about the importance of that as a professional
Mhm.
dancer that we're going to get into, just being able to dip your foot into many different styles, so you're not just limited to one thing. If you can just talk about the importance, how
Mhm.
that's helped you in your career, even to where you're at right now.
For sure. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people that I know now that are in the industry in the way that I've gone for it tend to have like more of like either a crew background or like a freestyle background, like one of those two, a little bit more
Hmm.
foundation heavy or kind of coming from a community.
Yeah.
For me, not quite, and I feel like I kind of like picking up started picking up those aspects of foundations and stuff like that, like a little bit later, more so when I moved to LA at like 22. But I loved and hated a challenge at the same time. And so like loved the challenge of dance, and like it frustrated me so much because I wanted to be so good at it so fast, but it was a struggle for me.
Yeah.
So I leaned for a while towards the struggle of ballet and contemporary and modern. And those styles were like the least natural for my body. And so I was like, man, I know I like in the first year or two of dancing, I knew I want to go to LA. Like my teachers had both had experience as dancers in LA, and I was like, oh, that's possible? Done. I know I want to do that for sure. But I was like, I want to be technically sound before I go and do the other styles that are more comfortable for my body. I wasn't good at them, but I knew that they would come easier than ballet and modern and jazz, stuff like that. And so, yeah, I decided to go to college and study dance there. So I did like a modern and ballet program. And in the summers, I would do like another, go to like another college to supplement that. And that was the hardest program I ever did. It was like every day from like 8 to 6. I took 3 ballet classes a day, modern class, jazz class, contemporary, like everything, everything. It opened me up to like this whole new world. And for a while I hated ballet, and then I found out that when I found out that men's ballet is different than women's ballet, like what they do on stage, when I found out that men do the jumps and the turns and all this stuff like that, I was like, oh, that's what we do. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I really dove into that technical situation, very hardcore, loved it a whole lot, but my body I think I'm more built to be an athlete than a ballet dancer. So I didn't have like quite the range of motion that I wanted. And, so that kind of mentally was holding me back. Whether it actually held me back is, up to opinion, but it was tough on me mentally.
Yeah.
And so, but I still wanted to be as good as I can with it before I went to LA and started to take more like foundation classes and choreo classes in that way. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that I didn't realize how much the fact that physically me not having the full range and still committing to doing it, I didn't realize how much of a benefit that would have for me in other styles later on. But it really has. Really has. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you can just take us back, Kris, I think there's something to be said, one, in deciding to pursue dance in undergrad. If you can just talk about that undergrad program that you did in terms of regimen, what it was like on a weekly basis. What did you do outside of classes, like working, stretching out? Like, what are all the things all the work that, you don't see on stage that kind of, doesn't get seen?
Yeah.
That's the work that happens behind closed doors. If you can just take us through, 2-part question, just that decision to pursue dance at a higher level. And then 2, what it was like putting in that work outside your given regimen classes.
For sure. Yeah. So like I was saying, I decided that I wanted to dance professionally when I was like 16, 17, like pretty soon after I started. I would say 17. I decided, I was like, I'm going to go to LA. That like makes sense. Dance Life had just come out, the TV show by J-Lo at the time. I was like, oh, I'm doing that. So but I didn't think that I was good enough yet. And I still wanted to work on my technical side. So I was like, I'll go to college first. I'll dance there. And then I'll go to LA from there. And so the program that I got into, I auditioned for a lot of schools, got into like none of them. I had like barely any technique whatsoever. But I got into a higher university, which is like, it's like a normal like school. So it's not like a conservatory where it's like Juilliard or Point Park or one of those. So our program wasn't as rigorous. We had a couple classes a day, a couple dance classes a day, choreography classes, dance history courses, dance pedagogy courses, et cetera, but it wasn't as rigorous as other schools. Which is why like I'm glad I went to Point Park Summer Dance Program over the summer, which really really killed me. And it taught me so much. And so what kind of happened was I made sure I did that intensive a couple of times. And then whenever I was back in school, I would obviously take the classes that were, given to me in my major, but also making sure that I spent at least 2 hours in the studio every day by myself, just creating a ballet bar for myself, a ballet class for myself, and then working on these technical things from these different styles and improv and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I really had to find that discipline for myself because I felt like I started off kind of behind everyone else because I had been dancing for such a short period of time.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted to like catch up and then just really kind of take off with it. So, but my school it's like a normal college. It was definitely a party school.
Yeah.
So, we definitely had a good time for sure. But I also made sure that, before I did any of that, I, really honed in on the dance classes and really honed in on my individual training for myself. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I definitely knew where I wanted to go, and I was making sure that I was still, taking my steps to get there. So yeah.
I find it really incredible for you to, start dancing at 15, 16 and you making that decision, probably within a year, like you had said, of taking these classes to go professional. If you can just talk about, I think, maybe being behind, quote unquote, in terms of like maybe your starting age, I think that maybe has a lot to do with the work ethic that you're like, okay, I have so much to catch up on. I need to be doing as much as I can outside. So maybe you were talking about, earlier you had said that, oh, I didn't have the range of motion, or maybe like it wasn't as natural for me. If you can talk about like maybe you starting later kind of seems like it's like this strong work ethic. If you can just speak on that, or if that's true or not.
No, definitely. I think, when I first started dance, I'll be honest, like I would come home after class and literally be like almost in tears or in tears, like angry, upset, because like not only was I not like physically capable of doing everything I wanted to do, but also I wasn't able to even pick up choreography at that time. And it was like crazy because I had my best friend now, he was able to pick up the choreography. And I was like, we both just started dancing. So I'm like, what is happening? And my other friend, he's about where I'm at, But I would feel so behind, and I would get home and be like so upset. But what I would do every night is I would do the steps over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until I had them correct to go into the next day. And I think just like that point, and I hate to say that that frustration helped me. I don't think that you have to necessarily let your passion take you to that point. But for a long time, it really took me to that point. And even sometimes when I was in LA too, I'd be so frustrated and I'd go home and just like, and then when I got into strictly technical dance, and there was no like jazz, funk, or hip hop or whatever for me to feel a little bit more at ease, it kind of like ignited the fire even more. And so I did the summer dance program. They put me in the highest level of ballet. And I have no idea how that happened or why that happened. And these kids, like, they're not okay. They're incredible. And so it's like ballet classes was one of those classes where the teacher doesn't even demonstrate. They say the moves and then you do them. So it's like literally they stop the music. They say what you do next to the bar. They don't demonstrate, don't show you, and then you just do it. And I'm there. I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? And then we do petit Allegro combos across the floor. And I literally, for an entire 6 weeks, did not one petit Allegro combo correctly. And I was so devastated. The workshop literally put me on my ass completely. Like embarrassed, shot, like everything. And it was at that point where I was like, I am not going to not be good at this. It's not going to happen. And so as soon as I left that workshop, when I went back to school, that's why I was in the studio every single day for 2 hours, creating my own ballet classes so that when I went back, or just so I can improve in general, but when I went back the next time around, completely different story. And I think that me feeling that, like, even embarrassment of that and like being just like put out there and having it be so visible that I, as one of the older people here, like I'm in college and I am looking crazy every day for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna get this correctly. I'm gonna get better. And
Yes.
so I think that me committing to the technical side first, and going through the heat of that for myself, when I came here to LA and I got more into like hip hop and foundation and choreography, it was not as hard for me to get into that as it was for the technical side. And
Mm,
so I was really able to stick with it. I saw the movement happen faster, and I felt like, yeah, I felt the equal amount of push, but I was moving faster. If that
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
If you're just kind of comparing your, your undergrad experience in terms of dance and then this
Mhm.
what's the name of the program, the intensive, the 6 week intensive that you do every year, was there a name for this, or
Yeah,
just so I can quote it?
yeah. It's Point Park Summer Intensive.
Point Park Summer Intensive. So from that first
Yeah.
time that you went and you had said, got your ass handed to you, you worked and
Hmm.
you were going to be there the next year, and then I guess that time in between and you talking about creating this your own regimen, 2 hours a day in the studio, just like, I'm going to be better at this. Did you ever
Hmm.
notice the improvement along the way, or was it not until the next year when you went back to the intensive you're like, oh, like I can actually feel like I see a lot of progress. Like, and it's so hard, when you're working on your
For
craft, you
sure.
almost, do you even, if you can go back to that moment, did you even like get a
Definitely.
chance to see like, oh, I'm actually progressing? Or it was just like one day it was like, whoa, like it's kind of coming together now. What was that like?
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny because like as I did the intensive in the summer, I just felt like trash. I didn't feel like anything. I felt just terrible. I
Mm,
was having fun, but I just felt like not great.
yeah.
And it's funny because after that summer, I went back to my school and they were like, "Whoa, you've changed so much." Like,
Mm,
what? I'm like, "Have I?" Because I feel awful. But
uh,
um, but so yeah, kind of what I did from that point on once I got back is, as I was creating my own ballet class, obviously it wouldn't be to the standard of the ballet class that was created at the intensive. I just
mhm,
didn't have enough knowledge of it to create that class for myself.
mhm,
But what I would do is I knew all the movements, all the steps. I knew them all. And so even if I couldn't, for instance, Petit Allegro, right? Even if I couldn't
mhm,
recreate the exact combinations, I knew all the steps,
mhm.
right? So I would just repeat, like I would just Glissagia, take Glissagia, take Glissagia, like just repeat it. Batu, batu. Like I would just repeat that stuff over and over again. So it
Yeah.
was so ingrained in my muscle that
Yeah.
my body understood the movement more. And I would start to kind of create more complex um, combinations, but at the same time it wasn't to that point. And so actually when I was going back, I remember thinking like, man, I've done all this work, I don't know if it's going to help at all. I could still really be terrible going into this
Mm,
situation because I haven't had that level of class.
yeah.
But the truth was it made the world of difference. It really did. And I went in and I was able to pick up combos and be like, whoa, okay, I feel far better. And I still had a lot
Yeah.
of work to do, and the program was still amazing for me from that point. But yeah, I didn't notice the progress so much at the time.
Mhm.
But when I was thrown back in there, I could see it, and I was like, man, I'm glad I did that, and I'm going
Mm,
to continue to do it that way.
mm. I love it.
Yeah.
And you kind of going back to when you first started and you kind of getting influenced by seeing these music videos and seeing the Usher music videos, you're like, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And you're now going through
Yeah.
this rigorous program at undergrad. You're doing this intensive, when you have time off, you're still putting in that work. Talking a
Mhm.
little bit about the post grad journey and now even just that decision to, okay, like I've talked about it, I've dreamed about it, but now I'm going to actually make the move to LA. And I think those huge life transitions are a lot more difficult than just like actually doing it. So if you can just talk about that transition, moving to LA, and what that beast was like, because LA is a different beast, man.
Buddy. um, so there was no like lag or like second guessing of actually doing the move. Like I very much knew when I was gonna move, how I was gonna move. I very much like there's no like chance to second guess. I was like, I know this is for me. I don't doubt it whatsoever. Let's go. Right. And so doesn't mean the move was easy by any means. That move was actually very, very difficult. Yeah, and it started off before I even actually moved. I like had a roommate set up. We are gonna find a place, and a couple weeks before I moved out, he dropped out on me, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is okay. We're about to do this. Okay, cool. Dropped out on me. The ticket's still purchased. I'm still going. You know what I mean? So luckily, I had my past roommate in college. He lived out here already, and so I got to stay with him for a couple months. But yeah, to keep it brief and give as much detail as necessary, I was here for the first like 2 or 3 months, literally going from job hunting to class to job hunting to class every single day. And started looking for a place as well. So I wake up early in the morning, call jobs, call apartments, like look on, the website, see what's available, and then go straight to class from there. And I had no car, so I'd be like walking everywhere for like an hour in like a shirt and tie and all sweaty, trying to go to different jobs and stuff like that. Catching the bus and then doing that, packing my dress clothes in the thing and going to class and just kind of doing that whole cycle forever. Could not find a regular job, like even like a sustainable gig or whatever. I couldn't find anything for like 3 months. So I'm like burning through money. I just moved into this like dancers hostel situation where I'm living in a house with like 12 other dancers who like, people who like travel in and out all the time, but I'm like the only person who's like actually trying to live there, but it's cheap.
Yeah.
So so I'm living there, and I like after 3 months or so, I finally got a bar gig that could like pay for like my rent and cover that stuff. Thank God, because man, it was close. And then that started freeing me up a little bit to where I could start to really get into training and stress less about that. I still didn't have my own place to stay though. I didn't have my own actual place until after living here for a year. So I subletted and bounced around and was all over the place. And I had like luggage that I move around every 2 months. The luggage is completely destroyed, holes and the wheels cracked, and I'm still riding the bus. So all that kind of stuff, and all the whole situation. And then like I said, I got the bar job, and that freed me up a little bit financially. I still wasn't making a lot of money, but it was enough for me and what I had at the time. Then I started to really dig into class. And I would show up to work. I worked like the night shift from like 9 to like 3 or 4, and I'd come into work in my dance clothes and like change in the closet, put on my actual clothes and come out and do it and cycle that thing out every day. So until it finally worked out. But
absolutely, it's I think it really puts things in perspective. And for those that are tuning in, you listening to this, audibly or just watching this video, it provides a lot more perspective on seeing you really like you're really about it and you love it, and you don't just go through all those you don't even know how to describe that. Those are huge sacrifices, and it's a lot. And in the midst of trying to find a place to live, have that stability, and in the midst of trying to find work to support you, you're also taking class still and having to keep that training. And I always think about that there are those that are more fortunate that can just take class and they don't have to worry about anything else in their life. And I think if you can talk about that dynamic, I mean, I'm sure you've probably seen it. And if you can just talk about, I mean, I feel like you have a little bit of like a chip on your shoulder when you're making all these sacrifices, and for you to go to class, there's so much more that you have to put in. And maybe for those that's just like kind of like, oh, like this is just class, but your mental is like a different drive. If you can just talk about maybe how all these huge sacrifices kind of maybe motivated you in the class or when you were working towards that greater goal. If you can just talk about what that was like.
Yeah. I think class was a consistent reminder of why I'm here. I know class was like an expense, but it was not an expense that I was willing to give up by any means. And no matter how hard anything got, I was never not going to take class, because if I'm not taking class, then what am I doing here? You know? And I knew that I needed to get better. I knew exactly where I wanted to go. And I'm like, no matter what the bills are, no matter what the food situation is, like, you know, I've figured out how to spend like $100 something a month on food, and like super duper cheap. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, no matter what, the class is staying. And it was actually like, I felt like I was in super duper hustle, like grind mode, and maybe not everyone else there was, but that was actually what I preferred, because that allowed for class to be the escape from all that kind of stuff, and to show me that also, you know, the world that I'm looking to get into exists, and the consistency of a dancer, no matter how hard it is possible. And these people around me that I'm looking at are, you know, reminders of that. So it's one thing to be back in Ohio and be like, no, this is what I'm working towards, and it's possible, and it's possible, it's possible. It's another thing to be working as possible, and then see all the people who made it a possibility around you. It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, nah, whatever it takes to figure the situation out. You know what I'm saying? These people are reminding me that this hustle is possible. So yeah, it was a blessing.
Absolutely.
And I kind of wish that you know, I could have got some money from somebody to kind of help me out. That would have been nice. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I think I've learned so much from that portion of my life that I would never really change, no matter how much I hate it at the time. But yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, you're taking these classes and you're balancing, you know, working, and you know, there's really not too much time for you to rest and maybe put into as much of your craft. If you can maybe talk about maybe when you started to get into the audition scene, and maybe giving our audience a little bit of insight as to what that was like. There's a lot of them are cattle calls, a lot of them are you're typecasted. And if you can just talk about like some of the most memorable experiences, or just some that come to mind right now, and what that beast was like adjusting to that.
Yeah. I still remember my first audition. I had a dance teacher, knew a dance teacher in Ohio who knew someone that lived in LA, right? I know that's kind of confusing.
Okay.
But so I met this lady. Her name is Erin Marino. I met her like randomly. We met for lunch. Her and Chucky Claypow, who is a choreographer, very successful as well. He was there for the This Is It tour with Michael Jackson. Wow. Shorter guy with the long hair, super powerful. Yeah, they're great. And I met with them for lunch, and I just wanted to like see what kind of information I can get. And, you know, I didn't know anything was going to come from it, but they had like a small gig, like, you know, it was like a free gig, but they were able to throw the dancers some money. There's no like budget. So it wasn't like anything where they like were gypping us. It was perfectly fine because the job didn't create any money. So it's one of those kind of things, but it was a great experience for me. I got to meet some new dancers. And while I was there, the dancers told me about an audition that was happening. And I was like, I don't have an agent. Well, also, mind you, add into all that other stuff, trying to find an agent as well.
Yeah.
But and I was calling agents like I was supposed to be represented by them. I was calling them every day. I didn't care.
Yeah.
But yes, they told me about an audition, and I was like, I think it was for some Latin award show. It was for some Latin award show. And I had for Liz Imperio and something, I can't remember. And I went to audition with no agent and no nothing and whatever. And I walked in and I was like, I'm doing this. And then I went in the groups, and I went as hard as I could. It's a bunch of people there, super packed. Yeah. This is my first like experience. I'm seeing all these dancers around me. I'm like, whatever, let's go. Nervous, of course. And then I just remember going in the groups and like dancing my little life away and doing my little trick that I had, and being cut the first round, and be like, okay, well, that's what that was. Okay. Okay, cool. And for a while, I was just like, I finally got signed. I was, you know, like I said, I was calling agencies every day, but I eventually put together my own reel, and I found someone to give me a recommendation. So I was signed to GTA.
Nice.
Started auditioning from there, and was like, you know, feeling good, feeling fine. Obviously feeling like I had a lot to learn still, and like a lot of progress had to be made, but was so excited about just like getting in the room and having an opportunity to learn and figure out, what it was. And felt like I was making progress. And then there was an audition that happened that I didn't go to because I was like, man, I don't think I want to do that. And I had a good friend of mine, his name is Jose Omar, super professional, done a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you should have went to the audition and give me a bunch of notes. Like, you should be skipping auditions. You're too new. And then he gave me a whole breakdown of what it is to audition and how you're supposed to audition and how you carry yourself, how you enter the room, how you walk out there to perform the piece and all that stuff. And before that, I wasn't really getting anything. And after that conversation, it changed everything. The way I auditioned changed, and then auditions started leading to jobs. And
those kinds
definitely
of things,
learning.
Those little nuances you're talking about are for whatever you could disclose to the audience or to us. Did you feel like those decisions that you had to do that ultimately led to you maybe being able to book more things? Did it feel natural? Like you talked about maybe like how you enter a room. Like, did you feel like you had to kind of change who you, like, what was that adjustment? Because I feel like there's a lot of like, it could be. So I don't know what that was like.
So one of the things, more so, it wasn't about acting or changing anything about myself. It was more so awareness. So being aware of the fact that when you enter the room, as soon as you enter the room, they can see you and they are looking at you. And they are, they're not like trying to, for lack of better words, they're judging you, quote unquote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're trying to see if there's someone that you want to work with. So being aware of that and being aware of the way that you're dressing and putting yourself together and making sure that it's a positive reflection of who you are. But I'd say the biggest thing that changed for me was the way that I stepped out onto the floor. A lot of the times, even though everyone there wants the job, it seems like as if a lot of people there either don't believe that they're going to get it or don't really want it that bad. So people will walk out with their heads down or kind of dragging or whatever, It's like when it's time to walk out on the floor and dance, walk out on the floor, like you're proud of what you're about to do. You're proud of where you are and who you are. It's not about acting. It's not about being like, it's about being like, yo, where I'm at is where I'm at. Let's go. Let's show what we got right now. Yeah. And then it's about, he told me this. He said, as soon as the music comes on, it's started. As soon as it comes on. Yeah. Don't wait for the dance to start. Don't linger around. As soon as the music starts, it has started. So I would, as soon as the music starts, I hit like, I don't know, hit like a pose move through it, or like start freestyling, or just showing that I'm feeling the essence of the music. And then from that point on, go for it. Don't hold back, engage, give them like full energy, like full performance, the whole vibe, and then finish it off strong, finish it off through the music, and then stand there confidently when you're awaiting the result. And I think overall, it's just about a commitment thing. He was telling me, he was like, I've seen you dance before, and there's no reason why you should not be at least making it to the end of these auditions. And I'm like, okay. So that was it. I was like, I just want to make it to the end. Whatever happens, happens. But I'm going to see if these things work. And the notes that he told me, those small minor changes, when everyone in the room is not doing that, it changes the whole thing. It's way more important than the dance part. Way more important. So, yeah.
I think just a little aside before we get to the next thing, Kris, I remember when you came into Going Up's rehearsal, which is a team that I co-direct with Carla Durang and Amor Ledesma, and Kris had come into one of our rehearsals. And I remember when you had to started going into groups. And I remember, given the current climate right now at the time of recording, we're still in a pandemic. And I think we were dancing outside with masks, obviously. And I think, it's still tough to like, kind of like, okay, like we still got to do this. And I remember you kind of feeling our energy out and weren't doing all those things, weren't starting as quickly in terms of, hey, music's going, like we're going. Hey, when it's your group, like you take that stage not when you get to center, but when
Yeah.
you walk. And so I remember you even still holding true to those same values you learned, and you were giving that to us. And I really felt like this, like, oh, like he really knows. And I really appreciate that, because you're really just trying to share that knowledge that's actually so critical to anyone that's trying to pursue the performing arts. So I just want to say thank you, because you were sharing that
Of course,
all
man.
that night.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that before it slipped my mind.
Yeah.
But getting more into it now, Kris, and you're kind of equipped with this newfound knowledge, and you're like, oh, okay, that puts things in perspective. Let me make the adjustments. You're starting to see things now. I don't want to spoil it. You end up working with some really big people. If you can maybe just first take us back to maybe the first audition that you booked, maybe the big ones. I mean, and I have this all written down, but you have some big artists that you worked with. But if you can just talk about that first one, and one, what that was like, the process, two, what that did for your confidence. I mean, like I said, you had just come over and you were going through all this shit just to take class, living situation, job situation, all these instabilities. If you can just talk about that feeling of getting that first big gig and being like, oh shit, or whatever that was for you. If you can just talk about that experience.
Yeah. So the first job period, or the first, like,
let's go with the first
bigger one.
Let's go with the first one you booked, and then we'll go into the bigger one after.
Tight. So yeah, so the first, I can't remember exactly what the first one was, but the first like cluster of jobs I was doing for a while were industrials, which is like where a brand kind of gets together. I'm sure you probably know a brand has their, like, it's like a modeling kind of situation, but instead of models just walking it, like you dance it and present the clothing that way. So yeah, and I remember the audition. I remember a couple auditions I did, but one in particular, I had gone to the wrong studio. There were like two studios that were called like West Coast something at the time. And I had gone to the wrong studio, and I was like, what? But I Ubered there. It cost me like a $20, $30 Uber to get there. It's gonna be like another $20, $30 to get there to get to the other one. And I was like, if I'm going to this other one, I'm going to book it. Period. I'm going to get this job. I put down that Uber money and went there, came in late, had no idea what was going on, picked up the combo in the corner, and I didn't even know if I had it or whatever, but when I went out in that group, boy, I went in. Like, it's like a whole different type of vibe from like dancing in class to like even dancing on stage. You have a little bit more comfort with what you're doing and you can start to perform, but there's like a whole different energy that comes out when I'm auditioning, where it's just like, it's a whole different thing. And I had that full going into this. And I booked that one from there. And that was a moment where, since I was late, I really felt like, man, the things that I was taught by Jose really ring true. And they've really started to sink into me. The first big job that I did, not to say those jobs weren't big because I loved them, but the first like bigger job that got a little bit more notice was I did Ariana Grande's AMA performance in 2015. And that wasn't an audition. What it was I was in Brian and Scott, the choreographers. I was in their class for like a year and a half straight. And they had like gone on tour and come back and the whole thing. And I was just in their class like 2 times a week, just like over and over and over again. Cause I like love what they had to offer. They're also both from Ohio.
Okay.
Connection. Yeah. And and I felt like they were making me a better dancer, constantly giving me notes. And I would come in and work on those notes, and they see that I would improve on those notes, and I get some new notes. And it kind of kept going that way. And for like a year and a half, just kind of, really going in there. And after a while, maybe after like, 6 or so months of doing that, I realized, because I was just there just purely for training. I wasn't trying to work for her. I was just like, I just want to train because they were really training me. And then after a while, I remember being in class and being like, yo, I would totally love to do that job. And I kind of stocked it away and kept training and, kind of just, slaying away at it. And I was at my bar job and I was, picking up glasses and going back and forth from tables and whatever. And they came in. They loved the bar that I worked at, so they would come in every once in a while. But, Brian and Scott came in. They were like, hey, can we talk to you for a second? And I was like, yeah, for sure. What's up? And like, how would you like to do the AMAs with us for Ariana? And I was like, Um, yes. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. So
Oh man.
yeah, that was my first big one, and I'm dancing with like all these super crazy dancers, Boy Max, Boy, like just super super talented people. And I remember I was Boy's opposite or next to him for like and in rehearsal, and I was
Uh,
like, what am I doing here?
surreal, yeah.
like, and he's just eating me alive, and I'm just like, what is happening here? It's just so
Oh
crazy.
man.
But I was, man, so grateful for that performance and the opportunity. And I, to the best of my ability, took it and ran with it and went full force. And I got a couple of shots that they like, Brian and Scott were happy about and were proud of. And I had a few that I was like really happy with myself. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, awesome. And the family's excited, everyone's excited. So yeah, it was a great first experience and like a real like hit into that world, but also with people that I was comfortable with. So it was like a nice like ease into that. So yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll get more into, the work that you're doing, that you've done also too with Ariana, but I think also you've done some work with Demi, I believe, Demi Lovato.
Yeah.
If you can maybe
Yeah, I
talk a
did.
little bit of that stuff too, or what that was like, or
Yeah, I did Demi's tour. What year was that? 2017,
so you were
I
touring with
think.
Demi, touring with Demi.
Yeah, I did her European leg.
Yes.
She had
Uh-huh.
another dancer who had to leave for some reason or another, and then they had auditions, and I hopped into the audition and hopped in for that second European leg.
How long were you guys on tour for?
No,
Or,
they'd be like,
you remember?
for that, just that section was 2 months.
Okay. If you can talk a little bit about
Yeah,
tour life. If right now we're talking about the Demi tour in Europe, and we can also get into,
yeah.
the Ariana stuff you've done. But if you can talk a little bit about
Uh-huh.
what tour life is like. I mean, for a lot of aspiring dancers, just I think that's always the dream is like, oh, to travel and to do what I love.
Uh-huh.
Talk a little bit about your experiences being a traveling dancer and performer.
Yeah. And the thing about touring is like you kind of adopt this family for however long the tour is. And so with adopting a family, there's a lot to like learn about yourself in that
Mm,
way. So for instance, like with Ari's tour, it's like, here I am with like, I think at the time that was like 12 dancers, maybe.
mhm.
So I have like 11 new like family members that I'm with every single day in and day out. I work with, I hang out with, I chill with,
Mhm.
when we're on the bus, we're sleeping in the same area.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like, man, so it teaches you like to, um, it points out things that you do that you're like, okay, I need to be more considerate and I can learn from this on a personal level. From on a person-to-person basis, as far as like coexisting with people around you in a smaller space for a consistent amount of time, for a long
Yeah.
period of time. And then also like there's so much for me to learn as a professional. This is the first time where I've gotten to my first tour was the first time I really got to um, be on stage consistently. So I got to really, really work on so many things on stage consistently.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing to like be able to practice those things in class, but now it's like the quote unquote pressure's on and you actually are doing something for people that like thousands of people are watching. So it's like I'm getting like consistent practice at that. And if I go in intentionally, being aware of what I'm doing, I'm going to keep getting better every time I hop on stage.
Mm,
And while I was able to like enjoy the process for what it was and just for the experience and the music and everything and the audience and interacting with everyone that was on stage, I also was very aware of the fact that I am working on constantly improving myself every time I get on the stage. And it was
mm.
just amazing to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of times if it's like one-ons that you do, like one-on quick shows, that's like one chance you're on stage and then you're off until the next time.
Yeah.
But here I had the opportunity to consistently get up there and do it. And man, I took full advantage of that and I
Absolutely.
loved it. And then traveling and seeing the world was incredible. I had never traveled outside the States before
Mm.
Ariana. So it was like opening my eyes to so many different things. And yeah, man, it was
Oh
great.
my gosh.
Yeah.
And I know you were on tour where you were mostly doing shows with Ariana, or what was that kind of a stint like with the Ariana crew?
Yeah. So yeah, we had like 3 or 4 shows a week with her.
Mhm.
Um, and which is fine because we had like every other day was off. So some
Mm.
tours just do like, every day is a show, or like they have like
Yeah.
3 days in a row or whatever. So no, I was grateful for that. Um, but yeah, we had 3 or 4 shows a week, all time in between. And it was great. All her shows, we had the same show every time, so had the same stage every time.
Hmm.
And we went from, we had like minor stage adjustments as we went from continent to continent, but for
Hmm.
the most part, this show kind of stayed the same, as much as it could. So yeah.
If you can give us a little bit into um, maybe rehearsal process and working, and I think it's cool because you have a lot of this insight in terms of the work that goes into. We all see what happens on stage, but it's really
Mhm.
that stuff off stage. And you kind of gave us a little bit for what you were doing in undergrad and kind of those intensives. But maybe if you can talk about, like you talked about, you're gaining family members, you're working with the same people every single day. If you can talk about, you know,
Mhm.
that work-life balance being traveling on tour, and those rehearsals, are you rehearsing mostly beforehand? Is it still kind of during? Like, what's that whole process like in terms of everything but the performance on stage?
Yeah, and every camp is kind of different with the way they do rehearsal. Some people like to rehearse before every show or like throughout the tour, but for Ari specifically, we kind of really hone in on that performance period a couple months beforehand,
Hmm.
and go into like the production rehearsals, which is like a couple weeks or so of us working with the actual stage and props that we're going to use, and which leads us right into the show. And then we have necessary rehearsals from that point on before the show. So as things are needed or things need to be changed or addressed, or especially within that first like month or so
Hmm.
of things, changes that need to be made and adjustments is really when rehearsals would come in, but not quite the same as before when we were building things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that building process is it can be intense for sure, because there's a lot of us, like, the choreographers are trying to constantly respond to the information that they're being given, which can change frequently, and they want to give us the share with us the information that's necessary, and then things change though, and we have to quickly respond. We have to learn how to trust people that we're working with, despite the fact that we're building a new relationship beyond friendship. It's like a professional relationship,
Yes.
so we're learning to trust each other. They're learning to trust us. They're learning, um, learning how to work best with them, and like what they need as choreographers from us.
Hmm.
You also have to put your ego aside too, because like it's not always about what you want to do as a dancer. When you're a part of the bigger picture, sometimes you can't always see what the bigger picture is the way the choreographer or the way the creative director can see it. And so that's what I mean. You have to trust them, that the things that they're telling you to do are for the greater good of the show, even if that means sacrificing a little bit of what you want to do,
Yes.
um, personally. However, at the same time, Brian and Scott do a great job of hiring people. They hire people for pretty specific reasons,
Mm.
and it's usually that everyone's pretty different, and they usually hire you because the type of different that you bring to the table is what they need.
Mm.
So it's a balance of the two. It's like, knowing that I have to support the group, and then also knowing I have to know myself enough to know when I'm adding who I am specifically to the table when it's
Ah.
needed. You know? Yeah.
I wanted to ask in that too, and you just kind of alluded to it right now, Kris. But talking about you're always being on tour and traveling, you're obviously extremely busy, and you're giving to this greater picture, and this that's going to be put on stage and is going to be seen by thousands of people. How are you as a mover and yourself? How are you still feeding you as a mover and you as what you want to do for your brand, for Kris? You know what I'm saying? Like, how did
Mm-hmm.
you balance that, being on tour, a full professional working dancer, and then still building your brand, still figuring out your movement, still making your connections
Mm-hmm.
for what am I going to do after? Like, what is that balance like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is definitely what I was kind of leaning towards when I was talking about every chance I got on stage was an opportunity to become better. Because every chance I got on stage, I would try to make new choices. This last tour specifically, for the first leg of the tour, I had set my choices. My choices meaning like, I'm sure you know, but just for anyone else that's like, what?
Yeah.
The in between the movements, like the stuff that where the choreography is not given to you, you get to choose what you do in those moments. And so there's a lot of like freedom with the show that we had this past 2 years ago, and a lot of freedom in a very beautiful way, and which I think they really used our individuality to really create a really phenomenal show. But I made sure that like for the first leg, I set my choices, found things that I liked, and I kept them consistent throughout the entire leg, and really like try to really commit to them in fresh ways and keep them alive and make them really strong and firm.
Yeah.
The next leg, I made myself change my choices every single time, every single week.
Okay.
So I would put myself like in kind of uncomfortable places, and it would change my show in some ways. Of course, not anything that's gonna involve me changing my interactions with anyone, but my individual moments for myself, So I would change what I do to kind of force myself to come up with new things and kind of be on the spot on stage and feel a little uncomfortable,
Love that, yeah.
And sometimes I wouldn't change like before the show. I would be changing like during the show. So it'd be like, okay, what I said I was gonna do, okay, you know what I mean? So it like forces you to kind of be uncomfortable, but at the same time, the show so well, so the performance is still going to be consistent. It's just a little bit of a toss up for you inside. And then for the last leg, I freestyled all my choices. I didn't plan anything. So all my choices were literally made actually in that moment. And I knew that those were different ways for me to progress throughout. So, the show would never get boring. It's just like the experience is phenomenal, but it keeps it even another layer of exciting. And like, I feel like I'm really, really improving literally every time I get on the stage. And then like off stage or whatever, we would, have like a little freestyle sessions, and I would choreograph a lot and, try to teach when I can on the tour and kind of keep my own situation going and post pieces and, kind of keep it, because teaching is still very important to me and always has been and probably always will be. So yeah, still like teaching on the road and creating on the road as well, which we were very blessed to have the opportunity to do. But I think the combination of all those things was really important with, my continued progression and really setting up and continuing what my brand is. So I'm still trying to figure out what that is exactly, but yeah.
Man, Kris, and you just talking about trying to figure out what your brand is. I remember when, we were going over, your intro, and you talked about being a mental health professional. If you can maybe just share more on that. I mean, that's so awesome. I think with you, first thing that may come to mind for a lot of people is the dancer, the educator, the performer, and you being able to have connected to so many people and working your butt off to get there. But talking about this other side of you, and if you can share and what that means to you and what you've learned and whatever you can share with us in the audience.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely, like in the past like couple of years or so, I got a little heavier into like meditation, and I started off like a couple like kind of like self-help books, kind of, I was like, wow, these are kind of great. Okay, cool. These make me feel like pretty tight. Okay, cool. So I kind of kept that going and was like really, kind of diving into my own, mental place, because I've always felt like the only difference between like the person that you are now and the person that you want to be is your mental state. And the mental state changes as a result of experience, as a result of lessons learned or whatever it may be, but the real difference is only your mental state. So I was always curious as to, how can I further develop myself mentally or internally so that, the external things around me that I want to change and progress, they can do that. So I got a little bit more into meditation and the self-help books, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And I think I kind of kept digging in that path, and I think over in the start of the pandemic, I really got more into that kind of stuff, and I was like, man, now that we have some more time to kind of dive into ourselves, I really want to keep going. So I started to go to therapy as well. And I was like, and it wasn't even necessarily anything that I felt like I really need to fix this right now. Like I'm having like some really big trouble. It wasn't so much that. I just really wanted to further understand myself.
Mm.
Just to know, like, I just want to be aware of the choices that I'm making, not only for the choices, but also for the root of the choices. Like, why am I doing things that I do every day, and or why am I not doing the things that I know will help me, or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So yeah, I just wanted to further understand my mental, and therapy definitely did that. And then I also read this book called the Seven Spiritual Laws by Deepak Chopra, which
Mm.
is a phenomenal book, which definitely changed my life in a huge way. I know like most mental professionals have that one book that kind of like ignites that fire,
Yeah.
and that was that
That's the
for
one.
me.
Mm.
Yeah, man, it changed my life in so many ways, and I think that yeah, from that point on, I was able to find a way to exist in this pandemic. And at one point, it was something that was panicking me and like giving me so much
Yeah.
anxiety. But I was able to, through these like readings and this therapy and all stuff like that, to find a place of like consistency, and a place where I was feeling like, man, I'm doing okay right now mentally. Like
Yeah.
I would, and I know why I am. I was like, I would love to share this with someone, but I was like, how would I do that? I mean, I'm too late for me to be a therapist. Not too late, but I'd have to go back to school and do those kind of things. I was
Yeah.
like, man. So I kind of sat there. I was like, man, I don't know. Whatever. We'll see what happens. We'll see what comes to me.
Yeah.
And then I did a podcast with my friend Darian,
Mm.
and I just want to get on. I did a couple. I did one with Darian. I did one with Brian as well, Brian Nicholson, and we just
Okay.
got on there and talked about like positivity.
Mm.
Chose a topic, and I just want to be like, what can we talk about that can inspire people or make people feel better at this time, or just share what we're going through and how we are moving through things, and hopefully can
Absolutely.
inspire someone else. And then someone kind of dropped a message to me and said the word life coach, and I was like, oh,
Mm.
okay, cool, life coach, maybe something's in that. So I did like more research in that, and then I remember
Uh-huh.
that when I first signed my new agency Block at the beginning of the year, I had a
Yeah.
meeting with this lady named her name is Jessie Douglas,
Mm.
and she's a mental health professional as well.
Wow.
And so I was like, man, I loved my meeting with her. It was super inspiring. I felt like super connected to it. I would love to talk with her further about this kind of stuff and see if she even just needs like help with some stuff. If I can like, shadow her or something. I don't know, see what I can
Mm.
learn from her. So I reached out to her and she was like, I would love to do session with you. I kind of told her what I was feeling. And she was like, I would love to do session with you, and I can teach you how to teach this kind of stuff. And I was like, this kind of stuff, by that I mean like thought management, understanding the mind, understanding yourself, whether you're a more spiritual person or a religious person, whatever kind of is for you.
Mm.
Um, in essence, just freeing up your mind from a lot of what we learn that takes it over and makes it a not so easy to live with kind of place.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all. But yeah, so I did session with her for a couple months, and she kind of taught me how to teach this kind of stuff. And now that I have learned, I'm looking to move into taking on my own clientele and doing like speeches and that kind of stuff as well. Fortunately, dance has kind of like picked up a little bit in the past couple months, so it's kind of directed me a little bit more in that in that
Yeah.
space for now. But I have my first client now, and I'm
Amazing.
excited to see
Congratulations.
what. Yeah, thank you. And so yeah, but I'm excited to kind of see what that holds for me in the future. It's something that I could see myself doing for a long time, especially because it for two reasons. It helps someone else, and also inspires me to keep continuing down that route and trusting that route for myself, because I can't share it if I don't believe in it myself. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you, Kris, for just sharing that bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point everyone has been extremely vulnerable during this pandemic and really
Mm-hmm.
questioning, okay, whether
Man.
you lost everything or whether like, the industry you're in is not doing as well as, it was pre-COVID. We were all affected in one way or another. And it's really awesome to see you kind of rebound and refigure, okay, dance, it's not as much things are happening. I also enjoy this and love this, and seeing how you pivot and you not being pigeonholed to just like, oh, I'm just gonna dance and teach and perform. But it's like I also have other skills I could do. And then you talked about when dance started picking up, then I can also go back. I can maneuver and weave whichever way I need to best
Exactly.
suit me. And I just think it's amazing. And hopefully after you'll be able to link me. I don't know if you have a site or if it's just like through social media, but we'll link
Yeah.
all your stuff. So, that people that are looking for, mental health coaches or life coaches or another support, I think Kris, just knowing Kris, I think he'd be great. And it's super awesome that you have that first client. I think that's always the toughest one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It is great because like it's teaching me so much. Like every time you work with someone, I have a conversation with someone, whether you've known the stuff prior and they're just learning it, or they know the stuff and or you guys have this similar understanding, like you're gonna learn from the conversation regardless. So every time I help someone else's understanding deepen, my understanding also deepens. It's like
Yeah.
it's awesome. Very
What would
awesome.
you what would you say to what would you suggest to someone that may be trying to pivot in their life right now, Kris? I think a lot of people may or may not have found another thing outside of what they were doing pre-COVID. And obviously, I'm
Mhm.
sure you found more things than just, oh, I really like this, supporting other people and recognizing mental health and making sure like this is the foundation of like how I can operate as a person. So what would, just from your narrative and your story, what would you maybe suggest to someone that's maybe still trying to find purpose or maybe still trying to find a passion amidst this pandemic? Like, what would you suggest to them?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of what it is honestly is well, sometimes people really know what that thing is. They know what it is that they really want to be doing, or something that they could be doing in addition to what they're doing, or whatever it is. But sometimes like fear or outside
Mm,
expectation or limiting
yeah,
beliefs kind of stop you from doing those kind of things.
yeah.
Um, so it's one thing to like move past those. But some people also don't, maybe don't know exactly what else they could be doing, or what they're truly passionate about. And for that, I would say um, learn to become quiet with yourself,
Mm,
whether that be meditation, whether that's like you just literally sit there. The book that I read by Deepak literally talks about literally sitting in silence completely
mm,
and having moments of not talking. And so I would do that. I would like shut off the TV and sit on the couch and literally just like sit there and be like, okay. Or I'd be like on my porch, or like I go on a walk or whatever and just be silent. It's like everything that you could ask or want to know, or something that you're reaching for, it all already exists within you. It already does. You may not know it because you haven't been with yourself long enough, silently, like authentically with yourself, but it's all already in there. And so it's like getting uncomfortable and being like, I know every answer that I'm looking for comes from me. I know every worry that I have and everything that I'm, pondering and trying to figure out, those answers all come from me. So the answer, in my opinion, is to be silent with yourself so that you can better listen to yourself. And there's nothing that you can't figure out. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
just about being patient enough and trusting your inner self enough to know that those answers are going to come to you when they're supposed to come to you. It doesn't always mean it's going to be the easiest answer, or the answer that's not going to lead you to something that you're afraid of, but also knowing that your fear and your worries are also only things that exist in your mind,
Mm.
and you don't have to let them run you because they really don't exist in the first place. I know there's a lot at once, but yeah,
No, I
yeah.
love it. I think I mean, I'm getting goosebumps as I hear that. It's cool to, I think there's that stigma attached, and it's always kind of given me a little chip on my shoulder. It was just like, oh, like you're a dancer,
Mhm.
like that's all you really do. And it's really awesome to see how locked in and how truly you talked about life changing it was doing your research and reading those books and being like,
Mhm.
you have newfound purpose. And even just me hearing that, being like, man, that really resonates. And so I hope those that are listening can just really just take that and really, putting the social media down and taking a pause on things. I feel like we move at 1,000,000 miles per hour. And I think COVID's really kind of slowed us down. But like you said, sitting in silence and just being patient, and it's going to be, you're going to figure, like you said, there's nothing we can't figure out. We just need to be patient with ourselves and not be so hard. And especially dancers, we are the most, in my opinion, the most critical people. We live in the mirror, we die in the mirror, we eat ourselves alive. So we got to give ourselves a break. Kris, your narrative is truly rich, and you've experienced a lot. And even just what you've shared today is really just, we've only tapped into so much, but even that move, to LA and all the sacrifices you were making and everything you're putting yourself into, and even just navigating the intensives and getting kicked down your ass and getting back up, and to see where you are now, and to see that, you've performed with some of the biggest artists in the world, and now you're moving and doing other work outside dance, and then still getting back into dance. You shared so much with us. And I just want to know, Kris, this wouldn't change anything, but if you could say anything to your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
I find this question a little bit tricky for myself, just because I know that I was supposed to go through everything the way I went through it. And so I want to say I don't think I would tell myself anything, because I think that every tough moment I have had, even if it was mentally tough and it was more than I needed, I took it deeper or more than what it needed to be, there was still a lesson in that.
Of course.
So if I tell myself anything, I gotta say, dude, you're good. That's it. I really would, because I've been one to definitely listen to advice, and I talking about with class, if someone knows more than me and their opinion resonates, I listen to it and I take it right away. I don't wait. And if it doesn't resonate with me, I'm like, that doesn't apply, thank you, and I'll let it go. But if something that I feel like resonates with me, I take it and I apply it right away. But also at the same time, I think I'm learning to trust myself a lot more, exactly when I'm supposed to be trusting myself a lot more. I think it's all happening precisely how it's supposed to. Even the parts of my life where I was like, man, I really didn't need to even worry about that. Worrying about it is what, taught me otherwise. And so I'd just be like, nah, dude, you're good. Just keep rocking. That's it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Kris, it's everyone that I've had on the show. I've hopefully at some point can do a follow-up and even seeing the progressions you've made in the life coaching or in the mental health profession, and just supporting others and what the clientele looks like, and just even furthering more into your narrative in dance or outside of that. Hopefully that we can connect again another time to follow up, because I feel like we're just getting started. An hour is only so much time to get to someone's story. But Kris, I just we for the audience that's listening and tuning in, if you're still sticking around, it's Kris is by far the person I knew the least. And we literally met one time when he taught, and, it was when not just the movement, which I really did enjoy, but it was really also talking after and being like, man, like it felt really good. And I don't think you can say that about every teacher you take class from. Sometimes maybe a little standoffish, or you just get different vibes. And it just felt really nice. The conversation I had with you after, and I just said, hey, I think it'd be great to bring on. And I think time and energy is so important, especially nowadays. And so I wanted to say, Kris, thank you for giving us your undivided time and your energy today. And I have a lot of love for you, man. And I'm hoping that you continue to stay safe and healthy and kill it out there in LA. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you next time, Kris.
Absolutely. Right back at you, man. I thank you so much for having me on here. I love it, man. I love what you're doing. I think it's great.
Appreciate it, Kris. We'll catch you soon, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.